They were making fun of the black girl, shouting, "Your jacket's a piece of trash," and laughing so hard the whole gym echoed. She stood there, silent, holding back tears until a high-ranking military officer walked in, saw the patch on her jacket, and everything stopped. His eyes locked on the badge. He stepped forward, and what he said. Next silence, the entire room. The gymnasium at Willow Ridge High School had been transformed into something almost magical. Blue and gold streamers cascaded. From the basketball hoops, fairy lights crisscrossed the ceiling like constellations, and every table shimmered with silver centerpieces and confetti stars. A rented dance floor gleamed underfoot, reflecting the spinning lights and the occasional flash of a selfie. It was the night of the annual school party, an end-of-year tradition where students dressed like royalty and pretended, if only for a few hours, that they lived in a world where lockers didn't jam and popularity didn't matter. At least that was the idea. Maya Thomas had stood at the edge of her bedroom mirror for 20 minutes before leaving her house, clutching the old army green jacket that hung from her shoulders. Her lavender satin dress hugged her modestly, the hem hand-beaded by her grandmother with tiny pearls that had taken weeks to sew. But it was the jacket that she hesitated over. It didn't match. It was faded, too big for her, and creased from years of use. The color had worn away around the collar, and the fabric was soft in that way only old military coats could be. But she wore it anyway, because it had belonged to her grandfather, because it made her feel safe, because it meant something. Maya walked into the gym alone. The moment she entered, a few heads turned, and then came the whispers. Is she serious? Oh my God, what is she even wearing? Looks like a donation bin exploded. It didn't take long before the murmurs turned into laughter. Tessa Grant, self-appointed Queen of Willow Ridge, stood in a satin gold dress with rhinestones along the sleeves. She eyed Maya like she was a bug that had wandered onto her designer. "Shoo! Hey Maya!" Tessa called out, loud enough for half the gym to hear. "What year is that jacket from?" 1942. The girls around her laughed. Maya froze, then walked over to the refreshment table like she hadn't heard. But more voices joined in. "Looks like she got it from a war museum. Maybe she's cosplaying as a janitor." Someone else took it too far. One of the football players, big, loud, and cruel, saluted mockingly. "Private Maya reporting for Fashion Disaster." Laughter exploded. Even the DJ chuckled and lowered the volume slightly, as if to give more room to the jokes. Maya stood perfectly still by the punch bowl. She could feel the sting rising in her throat, but she kept her chin up. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. What none of them saw was the way her fingers clutched the edge of the jacket like it was armor. They didn't know that her grandfather, Master Sergeant Elijah Thomas, had worn it during 2 tours in Vietnam and 1 in Iraq. That he had shielded soldiers with it. That he had folded it neatly every night even after retirement, and told her, "One day, when you're old enough to understand its weight, you can wear it." Maya hadn't worn it until tonight. Maybe she thought it would protect her here too. High school wasn't a battlefield. Or maybe it was. Trying to hold her tears, Maya slipped out of the gym and stepped into the cool hallway. Her heels clicked softly against the linoleum as she made her way toward the trophy case. She sat on a bench nearby, staring blankly at the rows of plaques honoring students' past names that would be remembered for touchdowns and GPA scores. Not for the courage it took to walk into a gym full of strangers wearing a jacket stitched with a story no one cared to hear. Back inside the gym, the laughter faded. The music picked up again. And just like that, her humiliation was forgotten by everyone except her, until the doors swung open. A hush spread. The gym had never gone that quiet before. Not during speeches, not during fights, not even during fire drills. Standing at the entrance was a tall black man in full army dress blues. His posture was stiff, commanding. His chest was lined with polished metals and colorful ribbons that shimmered under the gym's lights. On his shoulders, 4 silver stars. His face was serious, unreadable, but his eyes scanned the room like a man looking for someone. Behind him, a young uniformed soldier carried a box wrapped in glass. Inside it was an American flag folded precisely, and a photo of a young man in an old army jacket, one that looked hauntingly familiar, None of the students recognized the general, but Maya did that. Not his name, not his title, but something in his walk. The way his hand lightly grazed his chest, right over where his heart beat beneath the rows of decorations. He was wearing the same patch that was stitched over her own heart, the same patch they had mocked. And as he locked eyes with Maya from across the gym, something in the air shifted. Everything was about to change. At first, they thought he was lost. The man who stepped through the gymnasium doors didn't belong to the glittering world of Willow Ridge High's annual party. He didn't wear a tuxedo or shiny shoes. His entrance wasn't accompanied by music or laughter. Yet he held the room with a force stronger than all of that presence. He was tall, black with graying hair cut close to his scalp and lines on his face that looked carved from stone. His uniform was impossibly crisp deep navy, gleaming brass buttons and polished black shoes that clicked with each step. His chest was a mosaic of medals, campaign ribbons, and service badges. But the most striking of all was the glint of 4 silver stars on his shoulders. People gasped. A few teachers stood up instinctively. Principal Harris, who had been sipping punch and watching the seniors dance, dropped his cup and rushed to meet the man. General Hawkins, he stammered. We weren't expecting you until next week's Veterans Assembly. I changed my schedule, the general said plainly, scanning the room with steady eyes. I wanted to visit tonight. Principal Harris blinked rapidly, fumbling to speak. Of course, sir. We're honored. The general's eyes weren't on him. He was already surveying the students, some frozen in mid-step, some whispering nervously, some pulling out their phones, too stunned to even aim the camera properly. The DJ awkwardly lowered the volume again, not sure what protocol applied. Here, General Hawkins began to walk forward, and the students moved instinctively, parting like water on a ship. No one dared block his path. Behind him, a young soldier followed, holding a mahogany shadow box. Inside it, a tri-folded American flag, gleaming dog tags, and an old photo of a black soldier standing proudly in a jungle, grinning with his arm around a tank. Maya stood near the far end of the gym, trying to remain invisible, shoulders still hunched under the same faded jacket. But Hawkins had seen her the moment he walked in. He moved straight toward her. Unbothered by the looks or whispers, she stood frozen. When he finally reached her, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Excuse me, the general said, his voice rich and even. May I see your jacket? The silence became deafening. Students stared. Tessa squinted from across the room, clearly trying to make sense of what was happening. Her date nudged her, whispering something. The boy who'd mocked Maya with the fake salute now looked like he wanted to disappear. Maya's throat was tight. She nodded and slowly slipped the jacket off her shoulders. Handing it to him with trembling fingers, he took it gently, almost reverently, and turned it in his hands. Then he saw the patch. His lips parted slightly, not in surprise, but recognition. There. It was navy blue background, a silver eagle spreading its wings, 3 stars embroidered above it. Faded but still proud. Still unmistakable. The general looked up at Maya, his voice low but firm. Where did you get this? It was my grandfather's, she said softly. He nodded once. Elijah Thomas? Her eyes widened. You knew him? A flicker of something respect. Maybe grief passed over the general's face. He trained me, Hawkins said, before I was ever anyone. When I was still trying to survive the academy, he taught me what it meant to be more than a soldier. What it meant to wear this uniform with dignity. The students were now utterly still. Even the DJ had stepped away from his booth, mouth slightly open. Hawkins turned, holding the jacket high, addressing everyone now. His voice became louder, richer. Do you know what this patch means? He asked the room, blank stares. No one spoke. This, he continued, is the insignia of the 761st Tank Battalion. An all-black armored unit during World War II. They were called the Black Panthers. Before the Civil Rights Movement, before Dr. King, these men fought Hitler and racism at the same time. A murmur ran through the crowd. They weren't given parades. They weren't given medals, not for decades. But they were some of the bravest this nation ever produced. Elijah Thomas, her grandfather, was one of them. He turned slowly, letting the words settle into the silence. "This jacket," he said, raising it slightly, "isn't just a piece of clothing. It's a piece of history. Every tear, every stitch, every faded inch earned." He faced Maya again, his voice gentler now. "And you wore it here, in a room full of people who didn't understand. That takes courage. The kind of courage your grandfather had. The kind of courage most people never find in their entire lives." The room was silent. Even Tessa, who usually had something snarky to say for every occasion, was stone still. The general turned to the crowd one last time. "And you mocked her." A chill passed through the gym like a wind no one could see. "You mocked her for wearing this, because You mocked her for wearing this, because you couldn't see the story behind it, because all you saw was a faded jacket. And you thought that made her less." Now his tone turned sharp, like steel hidden behind velvet. "You should be ashamed." Maya felt her hands shake, but not from fear. From something rising in her chest. Something heavy and proud and real. General Hawkins gently draped the jacket back over her shoulders and looked her in the eye. "Don't ever take it off again." The gym just moments ago roaring with laughter, music, and mockery was now so silent that the hum of the overhead lights could be heard. General Hawkins stood at the center of it all, holding Maya's old army jacket in his gloved hands like it was sacred. His eyes scanned the crowd, pausing, deliberate, unwavering. Students who had laughed seconds ago now squirmed in their polished shoes. Some looked down. Others tried to feign confusion, as if they hadn't joined in on the taunts. But Maya stood still. Her heart thudded in her chest, not with fear now, but with something else. Something rising like heat from her core, pride, maybe, or a fierce mix of grief and gratitude. She wasn't sure yet. General Hawkins held up the jacket, his voice calm but commanding. "This patch," he said, tapping the worn insignia above the left chest pocket, "comes from the 761st Tank Battalion. Formed during World War II. All-black armored unit. Most of you have never heard of them." A few heads tilted. Most of the students just stared. They were called the Black Panthers, long before there was a movement. These men weren't welcome in white barracks. They weren't allowed to eat in the same mess halls or use the same latrines, but they fought, harder than most. He turned slightly, letting the jacket fall into full view. They saw combat in France, in Belgium. They fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Over 30% of them were wounded or killed in action. They liberated Nazi death camps with tanks that were falling apart. And they did it while being called every name you're probably thinking when you look at this jacket. No one spoke. Even the DJ stepped away from the booth, his fingers frozen on the next track. "This patch," General Hawkins continued, holding it higher, "was awarded only to those who showed courage, loyalty, and excellence in service. Under fire, not just in war, but in a country that didn't want to claim them." He turned to Maya, who now stood, arms folded across her chest, the jacket missing from her shoulders, but not from her presence. "This belonged to your grandfather, didn't it?" She nodded. "Yes, sir." "Master Sergeant Elijah Thomas," the general said, almost reverently. "I served under him, years ago. That man didn't walk, he marched. Through war zones and prejudice, through fire and politics. I watched him pull 3 men from a burning convoy with a bullet in his own thigh. I watched him salute an officer who once told him he'd never be more than a colored mechanic, and he saluted him anyway, with dignity." Maya's throat tightened. "You wear this jacket now," he said to her, "and I want you to know, you're not just honoring him. You're carrying his spirit, his grit, his greatness." Then he turned to the crowd again. "But some of you laughed at it. You laughed at her. Because it didn't come from a department store, because the fabric's worn, because you couldn't read the history written in its threads." Tessa Grant stood frozen in her glittering heels, her face pale. Her mouth opened, slightly, as if she wanted to protest. But nothing came out. "Let me be absolutely clear," General Hawkins said, his voice rising just slightly. "That jacket has seen more courage than most of you can comprehend. That patch has been soaked in sweat, tears, and blood for this country. He looked pointedly at the football player who had saluted Maya mockingly earlier. And you dared to mock it? The boy looked like he wanted to disappear. General Hawkins stepped forward, slowly and with purpose, and placed the jacket gently back over Maya's shoulders. The fabric hung there like a badge of honor. Asterisk. You wear this with pride, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Because when people see you in it, they're not supposed to laugh. They're supposed to salute. Asterisk. Then he turned back to the crowd, and for the first time, his voice dropped into a dangerous calm. Asterisk. And if I ever hear about someone mocking her again, this jacket, or what it stands for, I promise you, I'll be back. And I won't come quietly. The weight of that promise hung in the air like thunder. One of the ROTC students near the bleachers stood quietly and raised his hand in a respectful salute. A teacher followed, hand over her heart. Then another student, then another, asterisk, until nearly half the room stood in silent respect. Asterisk. Not because they were told to, because they finally understood. The general stepped back, gave Maya a small nod of respect, and turned to leave. Asterisk. But the impression he left behind would not be forgotten. Not that night. Not ever. Asterisk. After the general left the gymnasium, the silence lingered like morning fog, thick, heavy, and unable to lift. No music, no movement. Just the hum of the ceiling lights and the weight of shame settling on everyone who had laughed, whispered, or stayed silent. Asterisk. Maya stood at the center of it all. Her grandfather's jacket now draped over her shoulders once more. But this time, it felt different. Asterisk. Heavier, because she now understood what it truly carried. Lighter, because the burden of silence and humiliation had been broken. Across the gym, Tessa Grant shifted uncomfortably in her heels, her perfect posture wilting. She glanced at her friends, who were no longer giggling, no longer proud of what they'd done. Their faces were flushed with a mix of embarrassment and guilt. One by one, they stepped back, pretending to be suddenly interested in decorations or drinks. Tessa was alone now. Asterisk. The principal, Mr. Harlan, stepped up to the microphone near the DJ booth, clearing his throat. His voice cracked slightly. Asterisk. I think tonight reminded us of something more important than awards or parties, he said, looking out over the crowd. History is not always found in books or plaques. Sometimes it walks right into our gym, stitched into an old jacket, worn by a student we failed to protect. He turned toward Maya. Maya, on behalf of this school, I want to apologize. You were treated with disrespect and ignorance tonight, and I imagine many other nights. That ends now. Asterisk. A few students clapped quietly, then more joined. Soon, the entire gym was on its feet, applauding not out of pity, but out of recognition. Out of newfound respect. Asterisk. Maya blinked, her throat tight, trying to hold herself together. She wasn't used to attention like this, not the kind that honored her. She looked down at the patch again, rubbing her thumb across the faded stitching. She thought of her grandfather, of his crooked smile, and the way he used to say, "Stand tall, no matter what room you walk into." Asterisk. She never imagined it would take a 4-star general to make the world see her the way he always did. Asterisk. As the applause died down, something unexpected happened. Asterisk. Coach Riley, the school's ROTC leader, walked over to her. He was a quiet man, often strict, but always firm and fair. He had a reputation for discipline, not sentiment. Asterisk. I'd like you to come speak to my cadets next week, he said, voice low but sincere. They need to hear about your grandfather, and about you. Asterisk. Maya was stunned. Me? Asterisk. You honored the uniform tonight better than most who wear one. That matters. A few cadets standing nearby nodded in agreement. Then came the surprise that truly silenced the gym once more. Asterisk. From the side door, a woman in her late 60s entered, elegant despite her cane. Her silver hair was tied neatly behind her and around her neck. A small gold pin shaped like a tank gleamed. It was Maya's grandmother, Ruth. Asterisk. Maya's eyes widened. Grandma? Asterisk. Ruth smiled gently. You really thought I was going to miss this party, sweetheart. Asterisk. How did you? Asterisk. I saw the livestream on Facebook. Someone's always filming something these days, she said, shaking her head. Your grandfather would have been proud. So proud. She stepped closer and fixed the jacket on Maya's shoulders with practiced hands. You see, Ruth whispered, loud enough only for Maya. He didn't leave you this jacket because it looked nice. He left it to remind you that you come from strength, from warriors, from people who were spat on and still stood straight. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate you. Because one day they'll have to watch you lead. Maya's eyes welled up. I thought wearing it would protect me, she said softly. And it did, didn't it? In a way she hadn't understood before, it had. The music returned later that night, but something had changed. The dancing was more inclusive, less divided into cliques. Several students came up to Maya to apologize. Some stumbled through their words. Others said nothing at all but gave a respectful nod and a glance at the patch. Tessa approached, hesitant. She looked small now, stripped of the power that cruelty had given her. I didn't know what it meant, she muttered. The jacket, the patch. I just thought, you didn't think, Maya replied, not with venom, but with truth. Tessa nodded, shame flooding her features. I'm sorry. I know, Maya said. Just don't forget it. That night, Maya didn't leave the party early. She stayed. Danced. Laughed with classmates she'd never spoken to before. Because now, when people looked at her, they didn't just see the girl in the old jacket. They saw legacy. They saw courage. They saw Maya, this because,